Good evening and welcome back to the Pac-12 Chat Show Live here on the Voice of College Football channel. Ladies and gentlemen, it was Meltdown on Black Friday in the Pac-12. I'm Tony Altimore here once again with Tim Prangley, LBC Trojan Rick, Chris, and our special guest, John Jackson. JJ is going to talk to us a lot about Pac-12 and kind of where he sees things going. Just as a quick intro for those who may not be aware, Black Friday, we had a repeat of history. As you guys know, in 2022, USC and UCLA went to the Big Ten, leaving the Pac-12, just like 60 years before, USC and UCLA left the Pacific Coast Conference. So history repeated itself, and then last Friday, just as the 9 remaining schools were ready to sign their grant of rights, at about 7 o'clock in the morning, ready to sign the new Pac-12 deal, they got the word. Just like in 1958, once again in 2023, Washington was out. So Washington and Oregon left, and the conference is in shambles. So what happens next? Well, right now, we have the Pac-4 remaining that we're yet to see what happens. USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington are off to the Big Ten. Colorado, Arizona State, and Utah are off to the Big 12. And the Pac-4 is left with Cal, Stanford, Washington State, and Oregon State. An interesting foursome. Now, as of tonight, once again, we are live here on Wednesday at 10:30. The ACC presidents have just had another meeting on the potential of adding Cal, Stanford, and SMU to their conference. Pete Hamill from ESPN reported about 5 or 10 minutes ago, right before we went live here tonight, that the ACC presidents do not yet have consensus as to whether or not they will move forward with adding Cal, Stanford, and SMU. So we're yet to see what will happen. Currently, the Mountain West and the American Conference are eagerly awaiting word from the ACC because they would love to move forward with the Pac-12 schools, and we will see what happens. So, guys, it's going to be a little bit wild. This is the Big Ten with its western flank. The Big 12 now extends further west. And will this or will this not be the ACC? We are not sure. But let's get some better perspective from somebody who knows this conference as well or better than anybody. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big warm welcome to a great friend of the show and one of our favorite USC Trojan heroes, John Jackson. JJ, welcome to the show.
Well, guys, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, JJ, what were your thoughts as you watched Black Friday start to melt down the pack?
Show me the money. Show me the money. This is a money play by everybody, of course. I mean, everybody knows that. The one thing I am proud of, though, is that USC initiated this move as opposed to reacting and jumping on the bandwagon late. Mike Bowen, the former athletic director, deserves a lot of credit for this. He would go down as a trivia question one day, and a USC trivia question one day as who was the athletic director that led USC into this new millennium and put USC in great financial shape for a very, very long time.
JJ, what did you think about Oregon and Washington? Did you think that they would make it the whole time? The Big Ten presidents were very firm in saying that for a while, and Fox for a while, that they didn't want to expand, and then we're told Fox came up with the money.
Yeah, I think that for those two teams, I think the delay on them making the move. I mean, they made the move for the same reason, right? It's a financial move, and if they didn't make it, it'll be. I mean, they're having a tough time competing in the Pac-12 as it was. They were competing. That's a bad word, but to win the Pac-12 conference and be an elite team within the conference, they had not been for years. So I'm not surprised that they make the financial move. I think it's a good move for them as well, because now they're recruiting against. They've always been recruiting against USC and UCLA, but now it's even harder because the financial backing that USC and UCLA are going to have because of this move is going to enrich their facilities. It's going to be able to draw more, premium athletes to those campuses, not just in football, but in other sports as well. I mean, they're going to, upgrade soccer. I mean, they might even start new sports, rugby, things of that nature, and try to compete with some of the, lacrosse and, just different sports that they'll be able to compete even outside the conference, because there's so much talent in California and on the West Coast that if you get these programs up and going, they create new challenges for you across the country to make new rivalries and participate, get kids to participate in more championships, all things of that nature. Just makes your program more prestigious when you can offer more to the student athletes.
What do you think about Cal and Stanford being left behind?
Well, I'm not surprised. I would envision, I still don't put out of the realm of possibility that they will make the jump as well. If not to the Big Ten, to some other conference or somewhere else. It really becomes a matter of, can you become the big dog in another conference? Let's say if they get a Pac-6 or a Pac-8, would that interest Stanford or Cal to go to those conferences and then dominate within those conferences? Would that produce enough, swag or name recognition, and not name recognition, but enough swag and enough, prominence for you to have, to attract recruits? Because that's another thing. Kids are going to flock to these schools because of all the amenities. It could be the NIL deals, the facilities, playing in the big house, going to play Ohio State. Going to play those places. Once you've been there once, I have been there when USC played Ohio State. Once you've been there once, it's just an experience that is just amazing. So, Ohio State, of course, is now getting great recruits. USC can now recruit, I shouldn't say take some of their kids away, but be on a more, give kids from the Midwest, another alternative to come to USC, because you're going to go to the Midwest and play Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio State. You're going to play those teams, which is what the kids want. So it's all about the prestige and getting in a position where you can compete strategically on the recruiting grounds as well as on the field.
What do you think about the notion for the ACC? Would it be the Big Ten at least stretches halfway across the country? What do you think about the notion of the ACC potentially having players? And you were a baseball player, and so one of the interesting things for those guys who don't know, in fact, we were just talking about this a little bit ago. JJ played professional baseball in addition to being a football star. Football, one of the things is, when Chip Kelly's talked about this, football travels much more manageable. How rough is this going to be for the West Coast wing of the baseball teams and volleyball and soccer and all that, as well as the Big Ten folks? Do you think that that's going to be a change, and will it be even wilder for the ACC if they go forward with Cal and Stanford?
Well, yeah, the one thing for the ACC is, now travel comes into play. Remember, that's what people don't consider, is you want to win those games. And when you have players travel across the country, the long plane fights and those type of things, the players become exhausted, and can they play at a top level when they go all that far across the country? Not to mention the weather conditions in the fall. Us Southern California people, if it gets below 60 degrees, we want the game called.
It's true.
So that's another consideration. Sports like basketball, volleyball, things like that is not a problem. But remember, USC has a water polo, those type of things. Who's going to get in the water when it's 45 degrees? USC team will say, we'll forfeit. The kids won't get in.
Although I had a fraternity brother who was on the USC swim team, a very Southern California kid, and once asked me, like freshman year, he was like, "Well, what do they do like in Michigan?" 'Cause I grew up in Michigan. And he said, "Well, what do they do in Michigan in the winter for swimming?" I said, "The pools are inside, Billy."
USC
And he was like, "Oh," and I laughed.
I don't think USC practices water polo in December. I think they
I don't think they do.
They just call it off. Like, hey, we're good enough.
Oh, too funny. Sorry, LBC, you had something. I didn't mean to interrupt you earlier.
Oh no, I didn't have anything. But I'll ask JJ. JJ, you were a long time. You grew up as a Trojan. Your dad coached at USC. You're a wide receiver. You've been a broadcaster in Southern California with USC, and then doing the high school games on Fox Sports. This conference has been in your blood. I mean, what are your thoughts just hearing the news that within a day this conference pretty much went away?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it is sad because I played back in the days where it wasn't the Pac-12, right? It was how many teams we have? 10?
10, yeah.
So yeah, it is sort of sad to see it go away, but at the same time, the playing field has changed a lot in the last 30 years. Now that it's a financial it financially holds schools together. I mean, so schools come to play USC and come down, and smaller schools will come play USC just for the television revenue money for a game that is not watched a lot, but they want to get on TV just a couple times for their program to earn a couple extra dollars. So now that problem goes away when you have USC, Michigan, USC, Ohio State every year. I mean, come on, that's like having an extra Rose Bowl, and the Rose Bowl money pulls in a huge amount of money. So the television revenue and all those things, the new rivalries that will be formed, they're gonna find a way to keep Notre Dame on the schedule. I think that's almost inevitable. You got to keep Notre Dame on the schedule some way, somehow. I mean, even if they're the first game of the year, you got to keep them on the schedule some way, somehow. But there'll be new rivalries, and that will be fun to watch. The new rivalries that will be formed. There's going to be a time where USC gets in a little tussle with Indiana or somebody, and now all of a sudden that becomes a bloodbath rivalry or something, and there's a major upset, and Maryland or Rutgers or somebody beats USC, and now you have a rivalry brewing. It'll be something of that nature. It'll be a quarterback that might predict they're going to score 60 points on USC. Something's going to happen that's going to enrich the rivalry, which will make it even more fun.
Well, you're not just a record-setting receiver at USC. You also have children. Your dad was a coach under John Robinson, running back coach. Both John played at USC. He's now transferred over to Nevada. And Simone is currently on. Matter of fact, we're going to go see her game most likely at 7 o'clock. Long Beach State, you guys, women of Troy are starting their season. Long Beach State at 7 o'clock on Saturday. Washington State, President Schultz came out and said that this is going to affect their budget. And something like this, we all look at the football side of this, but, as a father of a daughter who plays collegiate soccer, I'm sure you have to be thinking about the fact there's a lot of kids out there. When you look at Washington State, I mean, it may not be viable what's going to happen to their athletic department budget after this all goes down. How does it make you feel to know that, these choices are ruining, not, changing the landscape of football, but might be ruining a lot of collegiate sports across, it starts now, but where's going to go next as far as these football teams being able to support the other non-revenue sports on their campus? Well,
selfishly, I'd be happy because the USC soccer field is under renovation. So hopefully before my daughter graduates, they'll have a new soccer field, and I'll get better seats. I can sit, right in the middle and yell at the referees. I got to get a seat close enough like the referee can hear me when I say, "That's a foul. Come on. Red card, red card." My daughter.
But what about, that's USC? Like, we got the golden ticket. We're not going in at half price Husky or discount Duck. We're going at the full amount. We're getting 100% of those daddy Big Ten big bucks, right? But I'm more talking about programs that have been left behind. The Oregon States who put all that money into Research Stadium, all those renovations. You know, again, a lot of this seems like, you know, Oregon State's been everything that's been right about the Pac-12. When you got other programs, there's question marks on, let's say, Cal. I mean, we talk about, Rick did a great job, by the way, you guys. Rick dropped the video. I don't want to steal. I'll let you explain it, Rick. But there's a lot of reasons why there's a lot of dysfunction in the Pac-12. And it wasn't that just USC, you know, USC, we didn't do our job either stewarding this conference. There was a lot of mistakes made with our hiring. But you look around the Pac-12, there were a lot of problems as well.
Well, there's 100 years of being the Real Housewives of the West Coast.
Yeah.
Between those, particularly between those 8 schools.
Yeah. Well,
in Idaho.
Tim, to back up your, sorry, go ahead. I was going to back up your Oregon State point real quick, just with this one stat, because I think it's amazing. There's 4 athletic programs in the entire country in the last 5 years that have been to a College World Series, an Elite 8, and have won 10 football games. It's like Texas, Michigan, Auburn, and the 4th one is Oregon State.
Amazing stat.
And right now they don't have a seat at the table.
And just doing everything right. Yeah, thank you, Chris. You know what I mean? Great baseball program, like you said, balling out when they do in basketball. That was a great run they had. And the fact that they gave USC all it could handle last year up at Reser. You know, they do more with less up there. And now what I worry about the Washington States and the Oregon States of the world is now they're left holding the bag. Everyone else ran off to get what they could get. And then you got 2 of the better performing programs in the Pac-12 that are without a home. And I just think it's wrong.
Yep. And one symbol that Oregon State of how good they are is DJ Uiagalelei making the switch from Clemson to Oregon State.
Yeah.
That's a symbol right there that Oregon State will, you know, put on their coattails, that they got the best quarterback in the country to transfer from Clemson. It wasn't like he wasn't having success there, all the way across the country to Oregon State. It wasn't like he's getting better weather. I mean, he's going to Oregon State and playing for what I think is one of the budding coaches. He's going to be a great coach, a great NFL coach one day, Jonathan Smith. I mean, he's amazing. I had a chance to broadcast him when he was playing, and at the time, he was the only quarterback that I've ever looked eye to eye with. So Jonathan Smith is a great coach and one of the best coaches in the conference, and deserves his due. And somebody better get him a job away from Oregon State. Otherwise, they're going to start taking a bunch of losses if Oregon State stays on this path. They've already done it in baseball. So what makes you think they can't do it in football? And I think
that brings up a great point.
The transfer of DJ is the first symbol that Oregon State is transitioning. And, you know, the coach, because DJ is going to be an NFL quarterback. There's no question about that. And because of that, he's going to bring a lot of flair, swag to Oregon State that they can build off of. So, and with Jonathan Smith being he's a little bit more the old school coach of run the ball and play action and things of that nature, be physical at the line of scrimmage. He's one of those coaches. And so I think that he's half the USC fans would love to have him, because he's not going to replace Lincoln, but half the USC coach would like to have him because he won't get in the I formation, but he will run the ball down your throat if you let him.
Yeah, and the Ducks know all about that, believe me.
Right.
Which makes me, I just thought this when you said that. I mean, talk about a shame. So you have a guy like Jonathan Smith who would probably be with the Ducks until some huge NFL offer came. But now, if they aren't able to, say they get left by this, we don't know what's going to happen to Oregon State now. But let's just say worst case scenario. Now you're talking about a career coach who's a Beaver alum. He would have been there forever. But do you think he's going to be able to just family? You think his family can handle taking Mountain West money or something like that? That's another point in this that might suck for the Beavers as well. Losing a great coach, it would have been there.
Yeah, I think that Jonathan Smith, I think, is the type of guy that will hang around Oregon State for a while. And so, I think when he walks into recruits' homes, he's able to look them in the eye and honestly say, I went to Oregon State and I plan to be here for a while. and I'll be here for the duration of your son's athletic career, which is big. Parents want to hear that, or kids want to hear that when they go someplace, the coach is not going to jump ship right away. And I think that Jonathan Smith is a coach that's a little bit more grounded and won't just, it's hard to say, but I don't think he's the type of guy that'll just run for the money no matter what. I think that, it'll be a while. He'll be there a while to try to set his, really make an impact on Oregon State, similar to the baseball program they have with Standing. I don't know how they do it in baseball, but they do.
Could Oregon State football this year be the San Diego State basketball team of last year? San Diego State, tough defensive-minded basketball team under Brian Dutcher, always been a good program as he took over for a long time. Coach, I'm losing his name, Steve. He was a former Michigan coach.
Yeah, Steve Fisher.
Steve Fisher, thank you. But, take a look at San Diego State basketball, Mountain West. They're in the finals against Connecticut, better than the Big 12. We've heard how good the Big 12 conference is. I hear that every day. There wasn't an SEC or an ACC team in the final either. So Oregon State, they're a program. And Jonathan Smith, like Brian Dutcher, gets the most out of his players. And they're an exciting team. So it'll be interesting to see what the Beavers do with a quarterback like DJ plugging into that system this year.
Yeah, I think they're going to be exciting to watch. I think they're going to be the team that you don't want to play, especially towards the end of the season when the weather conditions get a little bit questionable and you have to run the football and you have to be physical at the line of scrimmage. That's when it gets tough to play Oregon State, not to mention the fact that they practice in that kind of weather condition. So if it's raining, it doesn't bother them. They act like it's still sunny. So, I think that they have, something special. I'm not saying they're going to be nationally, dominant, but I think they're going to surprise some teams. And if you go into Corvallis and take them lightly, we've seen before how USC teams can get knocked off there. And matter of fact, I played there and we almost lost to them.
Well, we're lucky this year, JJ, because we're not going to be going up there this year. Thank goodness. Because I'll tell you what, that running back, the running back there, Martinez, is going to be special. You just brought up DJ Uyungule, but they lost Spates at linebacker. They've lost a lot in their secondary. I'm not doubting them. They could replace those guys. And I'll tell you what, wouldn't the greatest thing on earth be, if it can't be the Trojans winning this thing, I would love to see the Beavers, as they say goodbye to the Pac-12, to win the damn thing. I think that would be justice for sure.
You know how good Damian Martinez is? He's so good that Jam Griffin, who's a good running back, transferred to Ole Miss. So you got Jam Griffin going to Ole Miss, and you got Omar Spates, graduate transfer, going to LSU. You got two good players going to the SEC from Oregon State. What does that tell you?
And both guys will start. I'll say it now.
And real quick, thank you to Slap Happy for the super sticker, by the way. We appreciate that. Sorry, go ahead. Just want to give a thank you. Slap Happy is a good friend of the show.
So coaches know what a great program Oregon State is when you have two graduate transfers transferring to LSU and Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin knows.
Chris, what are your thoughts on the recent departures?
Well, so the one I'm taking a step back, and I want to throw this out there is semi tongue in cheek, but I've heard like on the Stanford and Cal to ACC thing, which sounds nuts to me. Apparently Notre Dame, right, is kind of spearheading an argument to have the ACC bring them in. And, I just think it would be great if Notre Dame felt so disrespected that they couldn't get the votes in the ACC that they just decided to join the Big Ten and make them bring Cal and Stanford along.
That would be great for USC for a number of levels, by the way. It makes a non-conference game. Us traveling out to South Bend, it now makes that a conference game, and also bringing more on. So then we would have, then we're talking about Pac-8, right? I mean, we're going to have 6. I don't think we're going to get all the way to 8, but we would have the California schools together, along with Washington and Oregon. What a great travel pod that would be. But here's the problem. And if that did happen, and we're going West Coast, you guys just thinking really shortly here. I know it's not a USC show, so I'll do it really briefly. It seems like that the Western, if you did have pods, that Western pod with Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA, it doesn't sound as nice as some of those Eastern pods with the Rutgers and the Marylands, right? Or having, no offense, I don't know if you're out there, the Purdue fan, Indiana. It's a pretty meaty
Minnesota.
schedule if that's the way they're going to work it out with a West Coast pod where you're playing,
Maryland.
top 20 teams every single year together. I get it. I remember, and it is true, having Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State all in the same Big Ten East. But I'm sure they'll get split up in this whole thing. I bet you they're going to split up a couple. And then they're gonna have it where you have a pretty much of a murderer's row on the West Coast. So it'll be interesting how it all gets spread out. I would love to bring on a couple more Pac-12 fans or Pac-12 teams.
And JJ, we just got a question for you, actually. So I just got a DM on Twitter from somebody asking, excuse me, asking, what are you looking forward to the most about USC going to the Big Ten?
USC, Michigan, the colors, right? USC, Michigan on the same field, whether it be in the Coliseum or the Big House. That's just historic to me. I just love that Rose Bowl. The what usually is the Rose Bowl rival, or used to be a common Rose Bowl rival, is now every season affair. That is the most exciting thing for me. Can you imagine that? I mean, with all the history and prestige of both universities, and now you get to see the matchup every single year, not just if Michigan wins the Big Ten and USC wins the Pac-12. Now you get to see them every year as a scheduled game. Put it on your calendar because you can go, and by the way, get your ticket in advance because it'll be sold out whichever home stadium they play in.
I'm wondering though, we did have that JJ before they added the Oregon and Washington teams, but now it's not going to be that way. Like, I was really excited about the fact that we were either get Michigan or Ohio State every other year. But now when you add that the 18 team schedule, I don't think that can happen anymore with it. Again, the rotating between the two sides each time. So actually teams are going to get rotated out. I wonder how the Pac-12 is going to do that because
yeah, Tim, like if you're getting either Ohio State or Michigan every year and they decide to do you play everyone in the West Division and you're playing Notre Dame, your schedule every year is going to be harder than anyone else's in the conference. Right. And yeah, you're going to say like, oh yeah, bring it on. But like, it is
you're right.
a thing.
And especially they got to make a rule because like you said, if that happens and USC has that type of schedule and they allow Michigan to continue to play FCS schools and they're out of conference, that's a double whammy. How embarrassing for Michigan to play an FCS school. They in the Big Ten, if this is a real conference, no more FCS schools if you're an upper tier Big Ten team. I mean, that's just bottom line because you know what? That's bad business. Fox, CBS, NBC, they don't want to put that stuff on TV.
LBC viewers hate FCS games.
There you go.
Actually,
so do TV networks.
If you look at non-conference games, believe it or not, actually, G5 versus G5 score better in viewership than major school versus FCS.
The Big Ten
people would rather watch SMU play San Diego State than they would to see Alabama play Austin Peay.
Well, because they're not going to get boat race. They're going to watch a football game.
Somebody in the chat's going to anger Chabby with the Austin Peay viewership. Whatever. But on average, FCS games do very, very poorly.
And the Big Ten leadership has the chance right now to say no more FCS schools. We're going to leave that inventory to the SEC. They can have additional teams because they don't play 9 conference games. They play 8 and leave those FCS schools to to the SEC schools. ESPN didn't want to pay you for another game. So do what you do. Play those FCS schools and whatever you want to say, help their athletic budget. And, you're being a good Samaritan. That's what I think.
And that's the thing right there, Rick, is most of the time when those games are made is because one of those FCS schools they don't beg, but close to it. They ask USC to please play them because it's a financial gain to even get on a smaller local network, and I work for Fox Sports, so I don't want to, say that that's not worthy, but, they would rather get a game on a smaller ESPN2 or a Fox Sports West, as it used to be. They'd rather get even on, that network just to get the game and the financial boost, so to speak. It's one of those things, a financial favor for those schools to play against Michigan, against Ohio State, against USC, and some of the good, some of the more better known schools, I should say, so they can get that financial input, so they can upgrade their facilities, so they can upgrade their program. They could tell recruits that we play the best of the best here. We're trying to compete with these schools, and we need you to come to our school to help us compete with the USCs, the UCLAs of the world. So a lot of those games, although we, people might, not watch them and not, look forward to them, if they're made, like I said, not as a favor, because I don't want to disrespect those teams, but they're made, as an assistant to those teams' athletic programs financially.
Yeah, that's my second point. I see. Sorry, I was just typing in the reel. So this is what I was going to say also. I was waiting for you guys to finish. One way to get around it also is going to a 10 conference game. Here's the problem though, Daryl. How about your conference gets to like at least 9 before we start playing 10? Because if we're gonna do this, then we're gonna have to change the rules on wins, losses, etc. Because when you guys are playing an FCS school in November and USC's playing its 9th out of 10 games up, let's say at Penn State in a whiteout, I mean that's going to be the problem we're going to have. Is unfortunately some conferences around here are skating by with only 8, and real conferences are talking by with that. They are seriously talking about having 10 league games. I will tell you that I don't think it's going to happen. One, just because of the, football is a violent sport of attrition. I'm a broken record on that. And when you have Big Ten teams banging each other 10 games, in a row, and then imagine that, then USC plays Notre Dame as one of its 2 non-conference games. Tell me who in the SEC is going to play a conference like that. If USC played 10 Big Ten conference games and Notre Dame, and then you look over and you see, Bama play Georgia every 5th year or whatever the heck they do. I don't know. You guys, how often does Georgia play Alabama in the regular season? I mean, it's like a blue moon, So from the SEC, you really shouldn't be making those comments, because I get it. It would be a solution to everything. But why do we have the SEC go back to that? Didn't SEC play 10 conference games during the COVID year? I don't think you guys will ever do that again. So you beat the crap out of each other. You guys couldn't game the system that year. So I don't think we'll see 10. Tell you what, SEC, you guys go to 10, and I can see the Big Ten doing it. That'd be great for everybody. What do you guys think?
More football is always better. Let me take a quick peek. Sorry, we got a couple. Let me just hit a couple super chats really quick. Sorry, guys, I don't want to interrupt. Matt Ritson making fun of Washington State's financial situation. I'll tell you, I think it's really too bad there. They're having a really rough time financially, and this is just going to be really, really bad for them. And it wouldn't surprise me to see Pat Chun seeking an exit if he can, because he's a great AD. Mikey G says, and thank you for this, Mikey G, pointing out, I love the Bevos getting some love they need it, but let's not forget the Cougs. Just as scrappy and deserving of a real conference. Mikey G, I agree with you. The only thing I would say is that unlike Oregon State, Washington State's president has been at the center of most of the Pac-12's messes. He sort of led us on to a lot of things that I don't know if they have come out, if they've panned out. I guess we'll find out someday, whether there were some accuracy issues there, because we have some real questions. So the Cougs have kind of dug their own hole, but they definitely are scrappy and deserving. We love their chancellor. She's a friend of the show, and we want her to have success. But I'll tell you, their president sure laid an egg. What do you guys think about Washington State issues?
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna touch on, and maybe you guys can disagree. I think they're in the hardest position here, and like even when you said like, there's the financial issues, right? But you set that aside. Getting to Pullman is not a very easy thing to do, and if they're not in a conference that has big schools in it, I think they're going to struggle more than anyone else in the conference would to get someone to come out to Pullman when it's not part of a league schedule. Like I just don't see a lot of teams making that trip.
JJ, were you on the trip to Pullman when the plane tipped over?
No, I was not, but yeah, I heard about it, and that's the one thing about Pullman. It's the weather conditions to get there, especially in the winter months, can be tough to get in and out. And of course, nobody wants that on their, to be the highlight of the game is the airline, the wind trying to land the plane, and all the players being scared and possibly injuries within the airplane. You don't want that. It just becomes, and like all these things we're talking about boils down to one thing. Anybody that's gonna, that is gonna make these type of moves, you have to be success. Your programs have to be successful to get the recruits. So how are you gonna be successful if USC, UCLA are cherry picking all the good players? You can't wait for a DJ Uiagalelei to play at Clemson, almost win a national championship, and then get lucky and have him transfer to your school. That's not going to happen very often. So you have to be in a situation, you got to, whatever the situation is and whoever you play, you have to be in a situation where you can be competitive, because if you don't win and you can't beat those teams or can't be competitive, the kids aren't going to want to come to school. All these kids want to go to a winner. I have a 15-year-old that committed to UCLA. Yeah, I know. Tell me about it.
We got a couple years to change that.
We can win him over. We can win him over.
He was very elegant when he told me, though. He told me, and then I paused, and he said, "Dad, are you okay?" He thought I passed out. I said, "No, son. If you like it, I love it." So, yeah. So he's a Bruin, and he's going there. But part of the reason was, prior to this year, before USC was relevant and was good, was UCLA was winning. I mean, and that's the way kids think. They want to play for a winner. They want to win, and his dream is to play in the College World Series. Now, USC, when they were talking to him, they weren't in position to play for a national championship. Now, they have turned things around, a complete 360 with Andy Stankiewicz and what he's been able to do with the program, which has been absolutely amazing, and has them back in the race for a Pac-12 championship or a national championship. So, yeah, but they weren't that way when he was getting recruited. So USC lost out. I'm not saying he's going to be – I'm not predicting any kind of player he's going to be, but he's a pretty good player right now. So, and USC lost out on him because they weren't winning at the time. That's what the kid saw. He saw UCLA is the winning program. So he went there, or he committed there. And
we can bring him to the dark side.
I know. What am I supposed to tell him? I mean, shoot, everybody's blaming me. What am I supposed to tell him? He's 15.
JJ,
There's plenty of time.
Well, I can't get him to clean his room, so I don't know how we're going to get him to change.
Actually, I'll tell you guys a quick funny laugh. So my dad played for Duffy Doherty at Michigan State, and they played at USC and got walloped by USC. And all of his teammates and coaches, when I was in high school and college, whenever I would meet any of his teammates and coaches, they would always say to me the same thing, usually with the exact same words. They would go, "Oh, USC, I hate that effing horse."
Right.
Because they played Traveler. That was when the track was there, and Traveler just ran around the field, around the field, around the field. And Michigan State flew home very unhappy.
Traveler hated that game. He said, "I'm exhausted."
Exactly. So my dad probably feels the same way about USC. Now, JJ, Rick was mentioning, so you've done radio stuff. Do you know, do you have plans for what you're up to this season yet?
Well, I have plans. Yes. I'm hopefully going to be a part of the program. I'm hoping that, to increase and do some more stuff. I'm healthier than I have been in the last couple of years. So, I'm hoping to, thank God. And so, I'm hoping to, play a decent role, a meaningful role in the broadcast this year. Cause I love it. It's my, I bleed cardinal and gold, and despite my son wearing that blue color in Nevada,
okay, no, he's okay. That one's okay. Because he is a USC alum too, isn't he? Didn't he graduate?
He is. He has 2 degrees, a master's degree and 2 bachelor's degrees. So I guess all that stuff when he was 8 years old, and when I said, "All I want you to do is get your degrees," he finally listened. I got one to listen. No, my daughter's a good student too, so she's listening. But but I got one to listen. Finally, after putting him to bed, giving him a script to say, "All I want you to do is go to graduate from college," he finally listened. Because
he did 3 times.
I couldn't get him to listen in high school. It was
all right.
tough.
So on behalf of him, I'm rooting for the Wolfpack this year.
Yeah, please.
Oh, except one game.
Except for one game, obviously.
It's a
That's too funny. That's awesome. I'll tell you, JJ, that's something that I've been so impressed with, everything that USC has done in this regard. Miller Moss, who's our backup quarterback, phenomenal guy. We hope to get him on the show sometime. But he graduated in 2.5 years and is now doing a master's in finance. And your son, JJ third, you graduated multiple times. And I'm really proud as an alum. It makes me proud to see our school getting kids in, getting kids through school. And then we look at the national champions, and they got a quarterback who's been there for like 45 years and still hasn't graduated.
Well, trust me, there's nobody prouder of their son than me. If you want to ask, my son says, if you want to know how proud my dad is, just ask him. He'll give him 2 hours of your time and ask him. So yeah, I am extremely proud of what he was able to do. And like I said, he's out of my pocket now, so that's the good part.
That's a good thing. He's up in Tahoe.
He also, my son, and this is a typical what it is about him, he recognized the rules. If you go to school in summer school, you still get your scholarship check. So I don't know if it was because he actually wanted a degree or he wanted a scholarship check, but either way, it worked out for us.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, they're gonna kill us, so we're gonna talk some Pac-12 stuff. This, right? So,
say it again.
Well, I was just curious about your thoughts. Do you have any memories? Now we're breaking up the Pac-12. Is there a game on the road, maybe at a stadium, JJ, that you will miss the most? So we're looking at the teams. So we know that we're going with Washington, Oregon. Was there a game even possibly at Washington, Oregon? What when you were a player, what stadium do you remember the most? The fans, the experience, everything.
Well, I remember Oregon because Rodney, and I hope he's listening, he threw me a pass down the middle, and I got my head knocked off. I'm still dizzy thinking about it. And so,
where was that? Oh, you don't remember because of the hit?
Yeah, no, but it was in Oregon, and Chris Hale, one of my closest friends, still reminds me of it. He knows the guy's name, and he always says I can't remember it now. But the safety completely knocked my head off. All I remember was trainers standing over me saying, You're going to be okay. And then getting helped off the field and calling it a day.
What about any memories from? What about? I know you have some Arizona State baseball memories, JJ. We're not going down that road. No, we're not going down that road. But what about football? Any from the desert schools?
Well, from Arizona State, probably the biggest game that I remember, and everybody that was around at that time remembers, that was the measles game when Rodney played. We beat them 50-0 on their own field, 50-0 in Tempe. I hadn't played a game like that since Pop Warner. Where they mercy rule, 50-0. They didn't stop the game in those days, but I think that's when they made the rule that if it's 35 points, you cut it off.
How about any memories? What about some memories from the weekender when you went up to either to Strawberry Canyon or up to a place at Stanford?
Well, at Cal, we clinched the Pac-12 title, and that was a memorable thing because that was the days where the Junior Seau and Leroy Holt, Aaron Emanuel days. Those were great days, when championships were the expectation. The Pac-12 to win the Pac-10 was the expectation. So we clinched the championship at Cal's stadium. That was another great one. And we also played in Stanford. I had the touchdown winning catch in Stanford with Alan Grant covering me. So yeah, you realize I can still remember his name.
I barely remember those games. I think I went to bed
the guys that I beat, I can remember their names. The guys that knocked the mess out of me, I can't remember their names.
Rick was Rick, you were a student during that time, right? So you were probably in the fraternity room getting enjoying yourself, or you were somewhere in that student section getting well inebriated, I'm sure.
JJ,
maybe a good pale ale back then.
I was at those games, JJ. But I went to bed like at 5 a.m. up there having fun at the weekender.
Rick,
you could barely find your room at the end of that day.
Rick, I'll trust you. Who set the record for touchdown passes in one game, and against who?
That was you, and that was against Notre Dame.
No, that was touchdown receptions, but good try.
Touchdown.
Oregon, 3 touchdowns in one game. That was a record at the time.
That's awesome, man. Wow. That's awesome.
Now they catch 3 touchdowns in a game as part of the routine. If you don't get 3, you go complain to the coach in the next morning.
Hey, I've got a question for Chris. Did you read or hear about Chip Kelly's comments about what he thought about this realignment news and
proposing? Right. Yeah, I did. What do you think of that? I mean, I'm like,
would you mind sharing?
So his whole thing was, you might as well break football off away from the rest of the sports, make everyone technically like independent, have just have like the 64 Power 5 teams and have them play each other, and the 64 G5 teams play each other, and don't worry about all these conferences and whatnot. And then I think you can do it as like I think the big impediment to that kind of idea, right, is that you would need all of these conferences that have their own power brokers and have their own power dynamics to agree to just collectively as one giant college football to have one media contract and bundle their rights instead of as separate conferences, which I think is what's going to happen with the 2 power conferences, right? They're just doing it with teams that they think are worth more money because they don't want to share it as much. But I think our guest had something he wanted to add.
Well, my only thing would be, and I hear you, and that, in a perfect world that would sound great, but it opens up the problem of who gets into the final. How many we have? Are we in the final 16 now for 12. The 12 for the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, who gets in the final 12, and how do you compare strength of schedule, those type of things, and how hard would you punish a school for playing? Let's say, Georgia beats one good team, but then there's SC and a much improved Arizona State that plays UCLA and Arizona State in the same year. How do you differentiate who has the more quality wins? That's going to be the problem. And the undefeated record will have to be a must, because although teams are playing those, FBS schools and things of that nature, they're still going to be undefeated. So how do you fairly measure a school that's undefeated versus a school that doesn't play a quality opponent? How much do you penalize them? And that's somewhat of the problem now, right? We're having the problem that, everybody's saying we're on the tail end of it now, where everybody's not giving credit to the Pac-12 as being a respectable conference. If you win the Pac-12, if you win the SEC, you're automatically in the national championship conversation. If you win the Pac-12, everybody says, congratulations, put that trophy on the wall or in Heritage Hall, and congratulations, but it's not going to get you a berth into the college football playoffs, because it's still the Pac-12 as of right now doesn't get the respect. So if you spread out those teams, how are you going to get enough quality opponents to say you deserve to be in that college football playoff? We don't get enough respect now, and if you let everybody make their own schedule, you're surely not going to get the amount of respect that you need to get in those college football playoffs without playing credible teams, which most likely are, if you go across the country to play Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia, somebody's going to beat you, and there goes your unbeaten record, and there goes your national championship hope, which is what USC is in it for, right?
Yeah, I can't imagine if that, and again, I think it's like a pie in the sky thing for financial reasons and TV contracts that we don't have to get into. But I think the way that you would try to make that work, right, is instead of having everybody schedule as they want, like independently, you'd still kind of have like 8-team regional pods in the same way that kind of like the NFL has divisions, right? And I think you have your 8 teams and you place those 7 every year. And then you play like half of someone else's pod in the same way that kind of the NFL does it that way, right? And then the winner of each pod goes in, and then people can argue about who the last 4 should be if there's 4 teams or however they do it. I mean, it's mostly like a thought exercise, because I don't think there's any way in the real world that they would even be able to like put such a thing together, because they're never going to get all 64 teams to agree to split the pie the way that we're going financially. But I think that's probably how it would happen.
I like the concept that Chip Kelly brought up. Notre Dame's independent. They play football, and all their other sports are in the ACC. So, just make football, those who want to compete for an FBS championship, like he had said, put 64 teams. The G5, put them in 64 teams, and let those other sports all compete in their previous championships. Now, again, you need leadership. And speaking of leadership from the NCAA, have we heard a peep? I don't even know. What's his name, Tim? Charlie Baker? Is that the NCAA president? He's been
Charlie Baker, you really need to give Reggie back his trophy, you idiot. But yes, that's the guy.
But we haven't heard anything. The NCAA loses a football conference. It's 108 years old, and there's no comment. There's no comment by the NCAA. And when was that? 5 days ago? At least say something to support the student athletes. But, there has to be some type of football czar, because the NCAA has been neutered, and they have no power, no leadership. They don't even want to be in the business anymore.
One thing I worry about, Rick, with centralizing the power like that is the ability. We know with corruption. So let's face it, we already know we're fighting a proxy war, right? College football now is this SEC versus Big Ten proxy war, really, that's set up by ESPN and Fox. mean, that's really the state of college football right now. The reason why these changes and decisions are being made, it's not because it's the way it's been done for years. Right? What's happening now is it's like the Big Ten itself, right? The Big Ten is not what it used to be. The Big Ten basically is a football entity run by Fox. That's really what's become. Come at me, get all mad at everybody, but look at the decisions that have been made. These decisions don't seem like how business is normally done. Bringing it, ruining the regionality of the sport, all the tradition and just out the window. The Big Ten is a very proud and rightfully so huge conference, mega conference. The way this is being run now, it's clearly, I mean, if I would have told you guys even 5 years ago that Washington and Oregon were joining the Big Ten, people would be like, they would look at me like I'm nuts, like literally like I'm nuts. California, USC is going to be the Big Ten. These aren't the decisions that are being made by the Big Ten. These are decisions being made by television. And that's just the way the sport's going to be from now on.
Whoever has to play Washington in December is going to regret this decision.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And you have to realize so the issue is if we go down to one guy, Rick, and because if you have one person that's in charge, I just think that the smaller you shrink it down to, the much easier for them to control. I'm not saying that anyone in that position, the NCAA or that level, is going to have any choice anyway these days. I mean, how much do these presidents have now? It's like, do you want to be a part of this? No? Okay, you do? Okay, come on. Here's your money. Come on in. I don't think that it's run like it's been run for 100 years. It's a totally different game now. These conferences are really, I mean, what's the next move? Like right now, all the people are excited and laughing, hand-wringing. I got news for all the people at the smaller schools. What's going to happen when the next big round comes? What's going to happen when, let's say, maybe they just dissolve the conference alignments altogether and just have these super conferences together, run by you're on ABC and ESPN, and the other ones are on Fox, and then they play each other like the AFC, NFC. I mean, when is this going to stop?
And that's a good point, and that's why we're finding out why leadership is so important. Mike Bone, Carol Folt, look at the job that they've done in elevating USC to a different level, which is why leadership matters. I mean, we got to be proud that we have great leadership in our program that don't wait and react after it's too late. They're at the front of the pivotal decisions, across the country. Our leadership is just better than theirs. That's sort of
100%, JJ, 100%. And I guess I'll give my shameless plug on the USC channel. Check it out. I'll be dropping a weekly video. It's called Trojans Talk on Tap. And I'll be keeping your glass full of the latest on USC football buzz and opinion sometimes on college football, the ever-changing landscape that it is. And I'm always going to give you a craft beer recommend for your upcoming tailgate. So the first episode dropped today, and it's good to see Exploring with Ben. He had made the first comment in the chat. Ben, it's been a long time, but now that you're a member, a discount duck of the Big Ten, I'm glad to see you that you're back. He had made a comment that, how ironic that USC, who destroyed the Pac-12 or something of that nature, is here. No, that couldn't be further from the truth. And I think that the comments that were made by FSU's president last Wednesday in front of the Board of Trustees, Richard McCullough, basically says there has to be a redistribution of the money in the ACC or they're going to leave. And that's what started the demise of the Pac-12, was once that Pac-12 grant of rights was signed by the new Pac-12 members back in 2011, 2012, because all teams are not created equal. And just look at who's left of the Pac-4, Washington State and Oregon State. I love those teams, but Corvallis and Pullman, Washington are not Los Angeles. And USC and UCLA used to have unequal revenue sharing for a number of reasons. But check out the video. It just dropped. I go into full detail, the four parties that are to blame for the demise of the Pac-12. It's Larry Scott, ASU president Michael Crow, George Kliavkoff, and collectively the 12 presidents who enabled those individuals and did nothing. So those are the four responsible parties. As JJ collectively said, once USC had leadership with Carol Folt and Mike Bone, they found a pathway out because there was no way it was acceptable for USC to make $30 million than a Rutgers, a Maryland, a Vanderbilt when USC built the Pac-12. They gained national respect for this conference. Anybody outside of the Pac-12 understands who USC is if they're a football team. They don't give the respect to Washington and Oregon. It's a punchline. It's Pac-12 after dark. Accept it, okay? You don't have to like it, but it's true. And, you know, USC saw the iceberg on the Pac-12 Titanic, and they got off a year ahead of time. When Rick George left from Colorado, the AD of Colorado, when he left the Pac-12 media days, and I think you were at Pac-12 media days, JJ, when he left Pac-12 media days, that was a red flag. 5 days later, Colorado leaves the Pac-12 for the Big 12. That was officially the Titanic hitting the iceberg that day, and boom, the other 5 schools that left were finding a life raft. 2 of them got a 50% discount to the Big 10. The other 3 corner schools, they took a step down to the Big 12. There you go.
Well, Deion Sanders said it best. You know, how can we expect the players not to go for the money, you know, and you know, stay in line with all the NCAA rules when you know, right in front of your face you see the colleges going for the money. But your college is going for the money, but then you want the players to abide by all the rules.
Yeah, the conference portal, right? It's not a players portal. It's a conference portal. And you know what? Don't give it all away, you guys. If you haven't checked it out, it's right now. If you go to USC Voice College Football, what was the title again, Rick?
Trojans Talk on Tap.
Trojans Talk on Tap. Listen, you basically it should be required reading or listening for anybody that wants to open their mouth out about what happened to the Pac-12, because Rick did a great job in 20 minutes explaining the entire thing. Whether you agree with him or not, the facts are there. He backs up his statements. I was really amazed with it, Rick. Just amazing. I feel smarter for listening to it. Anybody out there is not going to check it out, then please just keep your mouth shut when it comes to talking about it. Let the adults talk in the room.
And we talked about it. Hey, we are not created equal when it comes to teams. And fans can say that. Administrators can say that. But you know who counts and who matters? The TV networks. And they have spoken. They have spoken. All right? They're not going to go ahead and pay the Pac-12 for a TV contract. What was it, 13 months? But once it breaks apart, we'll pay you, Oregon and Washington. This is what we'll pay you to come here. Oh, okay, we'll pay you, Utah, Arizona State, and Arizona. They paid for pieces, for parts. There's money there. They just didn't want to give it to the Pac-12. Don't take my word for it. It's business. Look at it from business. Don't use your pom-poms and wave them, because that doesn't matter. If you do, then you're a homer.
Hey, Rick, can I get a link VIP, please? Can you send me the link?
I'll send it to you right after we get off the show, JJ. You got it. I'll get it right now.
You got me wanting to get off now and watch it.
I love you, JJ.
We have I can't get to it though. Tony, we have a super chat from Gixer. And Gixer, I was telling you to call in if you can. I'm sure JJ would love to hear from a great Trojan fan like you.
Who is it?
For some reason I can't pull it up.
Yeah, Tim, there's something weird right now, guys. We're sorry, not all of the chats are going through to sync with the master StreamYard program. I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, Gixer, if you would call in, please. But let me go ahead and read it for you. So, JJ, thank you for your time. For us younger viewers, what advice do you have those in pursuit of their dreams? What inspired you as a football player? Fight on. By the way, just so you know, JJ, Gixer is just an amazing Trojan. Rick actually met up with him at the conference championship game and had a great time with them. But he's just curious about, you know, what do you have for like the young Trojans out there, you know, and all athletes out there to pursue their dreams, and what inspired you as a football player?
Can you repeat that part of the question, of the beginning part?
Yeah. So what advice do you have for those in pursuit of their dreams, and specifically what inspired you as a football player?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, I would tell everybody, just like I told my son, you have to pursue your dreams until somebody takes them away from you. Because my dream was to play in the NFL. I didn't have the height, speed, or anything else that says NFL across my forehead, not a chance. But between the hard work, the hills that I ran, working out with Coach Bush, working out with getting smoked by Quincy Watts in the beach, between all those things, those humbling things, you just work. You got to work toward your goal until somebody takes it away. And that's what I did. I did it in football and baseball. I played the string all the way out until somebody said, you know, your services are no longer needed. And that's what I would say to anybody young that has the time to do it. You have to do it or try, play out the whole string, because if you don't, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. And that's exactly what I tell my kids.
Well, and that was enough to get you in and playing professional baseball, as well as playing with the Cardinals in the NFL. Also, record-setting wide receiver at USC. So you're a bit too humble. A lot of us, everyone on this panel, I know, and the older people, everyone here knows who you are, and it's just amazing to hear your words of wisdom. We really appreciate it. And Gixer, please call in. But thank you so much for the super chat. I'm sorry, like Tony said, there's something weird going on with our super chat. I couldn't post it.
And thank you, JJ. Thank you so much for coming and spending time with us tonight.
Oh, anytime, guys.
Thank you for forgiving us for going over too. We appreciate it.
No problem at all. I like you guys. I love you guys. Tim, Rick, you guys are special to me. So thank you so much. I love you guys, and I'll be on soon again if you allow me.
You
JJ,
are, I'm sure, anytime. Welcome
JJ.
here. We love you too, man. You're a great Trojan, and it's great to call you my friend.
JJ, thank you so much. I'd like to leave you with this, my friend. That was a great message you just gave to Gixer. Gixer, thank you for the question. But JJ, continued success in your recovery. Your health is the most important. We'd love to have you here. If there's anybody at USC listening, this man loves being a broadcaster. And you deserve an opportunity to get back on the broadcast in whatever capacity, because you have a passion not only for playing football, but for USC and for being a broadcaster, for all the years that you put in at Fox Sports West and with the USC Radio Network. It's time. It's time for you to have an opportunity to contribute, because I know deep down inside you have that fire and desire. And so best of luck to you, JJ. And you're always welcome on this show.
Well, thank you, guys. And I grew up in a family with the mantra, and so I've lived by it my whole life, and so I can't turn my back now when it's the toughest time of my life to this rehab situation, and so I have to live by the mantra and tell you guys to fight on.
Fight on, JJ.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Take care. All right. Well, guys, that was pretty cool. We just had John Jackson, legendary USC wide receiver, with us again tonight. Always absolutely just an honor and a blast to have him. But moving ahead, we got Sean here just in a sec. And let me just, as Sean joins us, let me put back up a easy call-in link. We got I have to share this thing. Sorry, guys. Let's bring in Sean, actually. And while Sean comes in, I will put up the QR code that we can all chat with. Sean, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Good. How you doing?
Great.
Good. Been a hot minute. Has anything happened in the last couple months since I talked to you guys?
No, Pac-12 has been pretty dull.
Pretty quiet. Okay. All quiet on the Western front.
Not a lot going on.
Yeah.
Actually, true. Not a lot going on, because it probably doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like much of the West, just a ghost town now, huh? Wondering.
The most of the West. What a weird comment that is.
What? No, like a lot in the West, just a ghost town. Ghost towns in the West.
You ever heard of Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle?
No, I think it means the Old West.
No, I mean the Old West. Like that's where the ghost towns are. The towns that used to. You remember the Wild West? They built these little towns, and now there's just empty buildings there.
Tim's
on the western part of the United States, right?
Tim, the ones in Arizona that are truck stops now that we don't care about.
Got you. Okay, yeah, we don't see many of those around here.
No. Yeah. You very much don't. I mean, there probably are ghosts in LA from people that die on the 405.
All
every day,
that money,
but-
yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Sean. You got something to add?
Hey, how's it going? No, so I just I had a couple questions. Something that hasn't been brought up much in this conference realignment dissolution is how big of a factor do you think geography really plays? I mean, there's not as much. There weren't as many ways for the Pac-12 to go to kind of stay relevant here because there's not much out. I mean, there aren't nearly as many major universities in the West.
Sean, you hit the nail on the head with the exact same problem that they had in the 1960s because they had no interest in taking the Oregon schools back after the debacles of the 1950s. But, I mean, USC President Topping, Cal President Kerr, they really looked at it and said, well, we don't have a lot of other choices.
Yeah.
And so, they took the Oregon schools, the Arizona schools got really excited, got really into, they wanted to improve the schools, improve the team. So they joined in, and then once you had Colorado and Utah, there's just not a lot left that meets what they historically wanted in candidate schools. And if you look at performance across all sports, so you look at academics, you look at performance across all sports, even, really just football, you don't see very many options for what they would like to add. You don't if you look in the East right now, you've got Memphis, right? You've got UConn, you've got, heck, you got Temple, you got Old Dominion, you got all kinds of schools that if they were in the West Coast, the Pac-12 would grab in a heartbeat, but the Pac-12 didn't want to fly 2,000 miles, and now they're, kind of in a hard spot.
No, yeah, that's exactly what I thought. And I mean, there's a major disparity just in the locations that they're at. I mean, Washington State is practically in Idaho. I mean, it's right on the border. Washington, Pullman and Corvallis are very remote places, right? I mean, and they're
Pullman is. Eugene is actually more remote than Corvallis. Corvallis is closer.
Yeah,
to Pullman.
Corvallis isn't that hard to get
or
to.
closer to Portland. I mean.
Okay.
Yeah,
Pullman for sure.
Eugene is fairly remote, and Pullman is very remote.
Yes, and I mean, and the problem is with the Pac-12, it seems like they had some very, very attractive apples to pick from, and some ones that nobody really wanted. So it ends up like this, where the Big 12 might have survived just almost based on mediocrity. Like you get past Texas and Oklahoma, and is there much difference between the top and the bottom in that league?
Well, I mean,
I'm
going to say this with all due respect. The reason why the Big 12 is so safe right now is because if you look at, it's kind of weird calling it the Big 12, because if you look at the major programs that really were a part of the Big 12, they're all gone now. I mean, they're all gone. And someone made a snarky logo, and instead of saying Big 12, they said Mid 12, because I keep hearing this big like mantra, like, yeah, we'll be the most exciting, we'll be the most this and that. It's kind of like the Pac-12 when we were struggling, when our programs were kind of down, because everyone was beating everybody.
What the Pac-12 said.
What's that, Chris?
No, I was just agreeing with you. It's exactly what the Pac-12 said. It was always just like, Pac-12 after dark, anyone can beat anyone. Like there was no. Yeah, it's exactly the same kind of mantra the Pac had when it was down. Right.
Which, by the way, is not a good thing.
It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And as because, Stanford and Oregon and Washington had some runs, but they couldn't get over they couldn't get over the hump. After sanctions, USC couldn't get out of its own way until finally in the last year. So, and let's just put it this way, Colorado, you guys had Carl Durrell as your head coach. I mean, were you really trying at that point? So we had like a everyone's saying it about the Pac-12. It's just like a bunch of mediocre teams, and once in a while we'd have one team play out of its mind and play well. But when you look around the Big 12, are there any teams in that Big 12 you could see? I didn't say make the playoffs. Can you see a team in that current Big 12 that you see winning a national title with a straight face?
No.
No, but there's only like 5 or 10 of them in the entire country anyway.
And none of them. Well, so there's a couple of them in the Big 10. There's, multiple ones in the SEC, and there's one, possibly two in the ACC. But there are zero. And this is, let's be fair. There's nobody in the Big 12 that's going to be even a long shot to win the national championship.
So I'll put a litmus test here. Like, would you say Wisconsin, could you ever see them winning a national championship?
Well, let's see what Fickle does after a couple of years. They've shown they get offers. I mean, I don't know. In this day in football, I know Wisconsin, there's some great fans and some money behind NIL. So to say, can they ever? Possibly. They get like a Ron Dane level running back. They get an offensive line like they had back in the day. They get a solid quarterback. With Fickle, I mean, think about this. When Fickle was at Cincinnati, right, he got into the playoffs with Cincinnati's roster, with Cincinnati's program.
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin's not just some small little program. So could they? They could.
So do you think Wisconsin as a program is like light years ahead of Oklahoma State, or like significantly better?
No, but I think
I wouldn't say no. Yeah,
no, I wouldn't. But I don't think either of them have a like. The Wisconsin hypothetical is like that they have a higher ceiling, but like Wisconsin is currently constructed and as current recruiting levels can't win a national championship. Like,
right, but I mean,
possible
just
for
got
them
there,
at one point. Right. But you can say that a bunch of teams being like sleeping giants, right? But there's only so many. What's like the thing Bud Elliott started of like the star. Where you have to have like you have like over 50% 4 stars and 5 stars on your roster or something. And like every national championship within the last so many years is like over that threshold. I forget what he names it. Someone in chat can help me.
I think I've heard. I know what you're talking about.
And there's only so many of those teams, right? Especially when the Ohio State's, SC's, Georgia's, Alabama's of the world, predominantly get most of them. I don't like how many different teams have won the national championship in the last 15 or 20 years. Not,
Alabama takes up a huge chunk of them. So you've had Alabama. That like the only one-offs I can think of are like Florida.
We have Miami, you have Florida State, you have Alabama, Auburn,
Miami's going back.
LSU, you have Georgia. I mean, it has been very, and you have Ohio State, right?
Yeah.
That's not a lot of teams, but there's a theme between what we just said there. We named ACC, Big Ten, and SEC.
Yeah.
And now that they're losing Oklahoma and Texas, which really, again, if you look at the Big 12, what's left of the Big 12 from when it was the Big 12?
How many?
I'm just being real.
Still in there. How many? Like you've got the Kansas schools, Iowa State, Oklahoma State. Is that it? Oh, it's Colorado's coming back. But yeah.
And do any of those schools have a prayer of winning a national championship?
Oklahoma State has a lot of money. That's the only thing I'll give to them and they've been good.
No, he died.
I know, but is his money gone? Is T-Boone's money gone?
It had that spigot has dramatic. I mean, I think the estate has given some, but in general, the heirs were not in the same mood to just like throw money, kind of like Phil Knight has been doing.
Okay.
I think, Sean, to answer your question, Wisconsin, yes, can win a national championship. And the reason why I say that, they possibly have the right coach right now. And if you look at the last 30 years, Oregon and Wisconsin are basically the same team. I think they're like number 8 and 9 in total wins. I think there's 4 wins that separate the 2 schools. And Oregon, if you ask them, yes, they could definitely win a national championship. I believe Oregon can win a national championship. They've been close. But Wisconsin, if you get them the right coach, the solid program, they have a possibility of winning a national championship.
With you said right there, with the right coach, like an Oregon level with a Chip Kelly, I could see them winning a national championship. Absolutely, they were so damn close. They very well could have won that game.
Yep.
UCLA. We were going to throw it out there. UCLA with the right coach, the right coaching. UCLA wasn't too long ago, but we're in that 30-year range where they could have won. The hurricane happens or doesn't happen, maybe they do win the national title. So I mean, to look at who can.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can. Not as currently constructed.
Not with the way Chip Kelly is recruiting.
No,
but you're joining the Big Ten. You're telling me,
not with the way that our administration runs football from like a top-down, like university level thing.
But that's something that can be changed, right? Like you can bring in new leadership,
a new AD, a new president. You guys are joining the Big Ten. I mean, I know, I hear what you're saying, and some of the choices that have been made in the past might, UCLA way better than I would ever think to do. But I still think that, joining the Big Ten, it doesn't guarantee, because we can look at some of the programs. Like I'm saying, you got to ask me, even though Rutgers is in the Big Ten, they don't have a chance of winning the national championship. I mean, they're just because you're in the Big Ten doesn't mean you're going to win a national championship. But I do believe if you're somewhere like UCLA, who is in Southern California, that's a national brand, a great university, you have everything possible to be a great program, whereas some schools just don't have that opportunity. Would you agree with that, Chris? Like, could you win it? If things were aligned properly, could UCLA win a national championship?
Right now, I think there's a very small subset of schools that play the game and spend the money to be able to win a national championship without it being a fluke. Then I think there's like a larger subset, and you can throw whoever you want in there that, if they change a bunch of things and all the stars align, then they can. But when I'm saying there's like 10 or however, I don't know what the exact number is. I just threw it out there. But like when I'm saying that there's like 10 teams or something that are actually legitimately competing for a national championship most years, like there's just, it's the same 10 or so brands.
So, Chris, you're telling me that the next 5 years, UCLA could not win a national championship?
In the next 5 years? No.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that because I want to sound clip that and have it forever. I just set you up for that so I could have that little sound clip that we could share with each other for the rest of the time. No, I mean, again, I'm not saying that you guys are turning around. I'm saying there's programs that have the ability to do it. And I think that number is a little bit bigger than the 5 or 6 that have been really good in the last couple of years. That's all I'm saying.
Hey guys, can you hear me? See me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, good. I had an app issue there for a second. It kind of shut down on me. Yeah, no, I mean, at what point do you even consider the Big 12? I mean, they're not really a power conference anymore. You have to have somebody that's elite, or you have to have somebody with the potential to be elite to consider yourself, one of the one of the power, whatever number you want to put next to that. I mean, if your best team would be the 7th or 8th best team, or best program, I should say, in any other conference, I mean, are you really in the big boy leagues anymore?
So which conference are you talking about right now?
The Big 12, because the ACC still has some big
Clemson, Florida State, possibly Miami.
Possibly
Well,
North
I mean,
Carolina.
that's what we're talking about with the Big 12. That's what I'm saying. I don't see it. Maybe someone can tell me a team, but no. I mean, look at the top of the Big 12. Kansas State. Do we think Kansas State's going to win a national championship? Yeah, we saw what happened to TCU. We saw what happened to TCU.
I mean, I think you could look at the 16 teams that are going to be in the Big 12 starting next season, and I don't think there's a big difference in the ceilings among any of the programs. I don't think. I mean, other than Kansas, I don't know if there's a real dog in that league, and I don't think there's anybody that's national that you think.
Well, what you saw with the Pac-12, and they were called, mid and that blah blah for the last 10 years. Rick, correct me if I'm wrong. Is the fact you had a bunch of teams that are winning 8-9 games a year, beating each other up, but there were no elite teams, and that's why they're no longer a conference. Would you agree, Rick? Rick, you hear us? I think we lost Rick. Sean, anything else you got for us?
Well, I wanted to ask Rick if he has a position in the Founders versus Bell's beer issue. I'm a West Michigander, so
I'm sorry, what was that, Sean?
do you have a position in the Founders versus Bell's brewery debate? Hot topic here in West Michigan.
I think I'm having technical issues here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yes. I think your question was about Founders versus Bell's beer.
Yes.
I love both of those breweries. They're great breweries out of Michigan. I also like Jolly Pumpkin out of Michigan. What is it?
Two Hearted?
Yeah, Two Hearted Ale. I like that beer. And then Founders, was it the Kentucky Breakfast Stout?
Mm-hmm.
Great beer. Goes well with the cornflakes.
If we're talking Big Ten beer, I'm throwing out it's not Michigan, but I'm throwing out a nomination for Spotted Cow.
Oh, that is that's basic, Chris. That is
or old style from my cheap Chicago days.
All right. Hey, you guys have a great night, all right?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sean.
You too.
Thanks, you too. All right, next up we got Rob's HK. Rob's, welcome.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but thank you for having me.
What's up, Rob?
Thanks for coming in. What's up?
Hey, not much. You know what? I love the show. I really started to get into it, especially with conference realignment. I'm a big San Diego State fan. I'm a San Diego native, and you know, I know my team has been taking a lot of flack lately. I was really hoping for that Pac-12 invite, man. I was praying for it. We were so close. I've been looking and reading all the articles coming out, but obviously that didn't come to fruition. But the question I have for you, gentlemen, is this, man, is everything that's going on with all the realignment and where we're at now, and with the 4-pack leftovers, you know, and the ACC talks, that I really get the impression that, you know, it's going to a Power 2 or Power 3 or autonomous 2 and 3. And I really feel that, you know, within maybe a 5 to 10 year mark that, you know, these super conferences with the autonomous status, I really believe they want to leave out the G5s, right? And I think that's overall bad for the health of college football. Obviously, a lot of the regionality is gone away with, and a lot of rivalries. But you know, as a big San Diego State fan, there's a ton of us out here. I know that you know, we get criticized a lot, and you know, the leadership's decisions, you know, publicly and you know, politically. I mean, that Dennis Dodd, or was it Dennis Dodd or Ross Dellinger, whoever wrote that article yesterday about San Diego State, you know, attempting to write that the coup yesterday. But
your AD came out and flat out, your AD came out and flat out said that was not true.
I hope it's not true, right? You know what I mean? But at the same time,
yeah, no, I mean, your athletic director posted an official reply that literally called Dennis Dodd a liar.
Right. I mean, you know what?
Which does not surprise me.
Well, I look, you know, I would hope that you know, the Dennis Dodd's, you know, reputation and you know, integrity precedes him. I don't know, it's tough, right? You know, the one thing I would like to see is you know, JD Wicker, the athletic director, if he's going to make a statement on that, you know, I know he's not obliged or obligated to come out, but I would like to see at least a public defense, right? And put some facts out there why that's not true. I think that would, you know, sit well with a lot of people as far as, you know.
Oh, he did. Take a look at JD Wicker's Twitter from yesterday. He posted quite a lengthy rebuttal.
Okay, well, that's good. That's great, man. Yeah, I mean, I'll have to follow up on that because, but you know what? And
it was really good.
The point I'm trying to make with this is, in all reality, you know, it's survival now, right? Because where everything's going is from a separation in money, and everything else. I quite frankly don't think it's a bad idea to round up the remaining Pac-4 and the most, you know, prestigious brands left out there within the Group of 5 conferences and rally them all together and create at least a respectable, you know, G5 conference that, you know, would at least in my opinion, if you put the Boise States, the San Diego States, the Tulanes, the Navies, you know, the USFs, the SMUs all together along with the Pac leftovers, I at least think that they could argue and solidify at least that conference champion still obtaining a playoff spot, right? Because that's my concern as well, is that I think that with these conferences like the Big Ten and SEC, I think they're going to get to a point, they're going to say, hey, look, man, your guys' strength of schedule doesn't mean anything to us, and they're going to try to go that way, and they're going to say, hey, you guys don't deserve a playoff spot because we beat the hell out of each other up in a conference schedule, and your guys' schedule doesn't matter to us. So I just think there's that separation, right? And with that being said, gentlemen, I'm gonna turn it back over to you. And where does San Diego State stand? Where does Boise State stand? Where does SMU stand if they don't get an ACC invite? Where do we go from here, man? Because I'm really worried about the health of the sport. And there's thousands of fans out there like me, and we're concerned.
But anyway,
I'll tell you, I agree with you completely.
Go ahead,
Yes,
Tony.
sir.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Tim.
Well, no, I say, Rob, before you go, hold on just 1 second. No, go ahead, Tony. What were you saying?
I was going to say, I agree with you completely because I worry a lot about losing relevance. So we've talked about it on the show before. We've done some studies about the effects that losing relevance to major sports picture had on absolutely destroying college football in the Northeast. And those fans left college football and went to the NFL, and they never came back. And it worries me tremendously what would happen if we lose the relevance of San Diego State, and we lose the relevance of Fresno, and we lose the relevance of Wazoo, and we lose the relevance of Oregon State. Because the thing is those fans, they're not going to go from cheering for San Diego State to cheering from UCLA. They're just going to cheer for the Chargers, the Rams, or whoever.
Right.
And
I hate the Chargers.
Yeah, probably not the Chargers, speaking of issues, but maybe they'll cheer for the Cardinals. I don't know, but the real thing is that you lose that relevance, and I think it's important that they maintain that relevance. I agree with you completely. I think the idea of like some kind of an all-star league would be a good thing. Problem with that is that kind of stuff takes time, and it takes tens of millions of dollars of exit fees in some of these conferences that if you're going to put that together, you don't really have.
Right.
So I guess we're going to see what happens. A lot of it's going to hinge on apparently this. So as we've been on the air over the past hour and a half now, more articles have come out, more leaks from the ACC of people who at this point now do not seem to believe that the ACC is going to be likely to take Stanford and Cal. If they do not, I mean, we'll see. If they do not, or maybe this stuff can change in a minute. But if they don't, then it's going to get really, really, really interesting. And Sean Garner, thank you, Sean. We can't put the super chats up. There's some kind of error going on with the streaming platform. But thank you so much for your super chat. Sean says, thanks for the conversation, guys. Always love to hear your informed perspectives. Any thoughts on the future of the Pac-4 institutions? So this is kind of what we're talking about here. What do they do? Do they go? One of the questions is apparently the American Conference very, very openly wants all of them. And I'll tell you, I've done some analysis, and the football quality of the American and the university quality of the American is significantly higher than of the Mountain West. The Mountain West, however, though, is much closer, much better geography, good sinking up. And so that may make more sense as well. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Where do they go from here if this ACC thing falls apart?
Real quick, speaking of the AAC, like Tulane versus University of Texas, SA has a chance to in week 9 or 10 or whatever to be one of the best games of that week if both those teams play as well as they could. I'm telling you right now, there's some good football in that conference. I'll let you guys jump on the more general question as to what happens, because I'm burnt out on conference realignment.
Well, I generally had
I'll offer an opinion on that, Rob. And it's unfortunate, but this has been an issue with schools such as San Diego State and Boise State and Fresno State for a number of years. Okay. And this goes back to the 90s. And unfortunately, in this sport, there's no clear pathway for a G5 team to honestly have a chance at national championship. And I've always thought this was wrong because the deck is stacked. There's no way at the beginning of the year. I mean, you can go 12-0, and it's happened. It's happened with Central Florida. It's happened with Boise. It's happened with Utah, where you can do everything right. But at the end of the day, there's guys like Dennis Dodd. There's shills out there by the networks that will run hit pieces, and they will get a following, a gathering, a narrative where they'll pit up an undefeated G5 team versus, a 1-loss, 2-loss team from the SEC. This isn't anything new. And this came very apparent when SC had the unfair sanctions put against them in 2010. If you look at that, and this is a different story for a different day, but the national perception was USC was horrible, that they were down. And I just shared this on our show the other night. If you look at it during this Pac-12 TV deal, it's in this last year coming up, but the 11 years since this Pac-12 grant arise from 2012 to 2021, Oregon had the most wins during that period, 101. Washington had second, 89, and USC and Utah were tied with 88 wins, and Stanford had 84. So even in USC's darkest decade, one of the darkest decades, still the third most wins in the Pac-12. But you wouldn't believe that because of the national narrative. And unfortunately, when USC is not on top, they don't give any respect to the West Coast football. And that's to a Power 5 conference in the Pac-12. We've heard the national narrative because it's a hashtag, Pac-12 After Dark, watching TV on Thursday. It's built up. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, Rob, is because you're exactly right. What's going to happen now with the Big Ten, the SEC, they're going to talk everybody else down. I mean, sorry to be in the Mountain West. I mean, that's always been a challenge. But it's frustrating for a team like San Diego State that's doing everything right, has built a stadium, has grown their brand, such as like an Oregon State. But at the end of the day, you've got Dennis Dodds who are going to shoot you down and create that negative narrative. That's who they are. That's what they do.
Well, and that's when I feel really bad for like Oregon State and Wazoo, right? And I push back against some other people online, and I'm respectful about it. But my argument to that is this, and I agree with you, is if you're going to talk about athletic integrity, right? Then what about the schools like Vanderbilt and Rutgers and I don't want to say Maryland, but let's just say like Vanderbilt and Rutgers and any other bottom dweller, respectfully, I'm just talking about, these are great institutions collectively. I'm not knocking the institution, but I'm just talking about from a football athletic performance that have been at the bottom of their respective conferences for year in and year out. And then you got teams like OSU and Boise State. Definitely, I think they're my prime G5 example, right? That's been on a consistent basis for the last 20 years. Definitely a new grown rival within the Mountain West between us. But when I push back and I argue the athletic integrity, right, regarding football, the answer I get is that, well, it's just not fair, right? Well, I'm just like, well, then I understand that life's not fair, right? And you got to deal with it and everything like that. But you can't tell me that it's based on a single, premise or purpose when you guys are talking about athletic integrity, when there's plenty of respectable West Coast schools, to include some G5 schools like Boise State. I think that's the most perfect example I can give from a G5 perspective, at least over the last 20 years. I mean, in my opinion, man, they're deserving of a Big 12 invite, right? You know what I mean? Or a PAC invite. I know we can get into the academic requirements later on, but I'm just saying an on-the-field performance, man. They've done everything right. They've built that brand. They've built that reputation as far as competitiveness, and they're being left out just like OSU is. And Oregon State, man, I mean, I really feel bad for them because they don't deserve this, right? And it's just it's bad. And I think that, I'll just kind of leave it with, I think that the 4-team playoff over the past couple years, right, I'd say maybe over the last 5 years, I think the ratings went down, especially when you just saw Alabama in it the whole time. And again, no disrespect to Alabama. What Saban has done over there has been amazing. I wish that was San Diego State. But what I'm saying, though, is that when it's so consolidated and it's so centralized and there isn't a respectable amount of parity, and I'm not talking about charity here, I'm talking about just respectable parity that gives even a school like San Diego State, just a small chance. If they go perfect, just like Cincinnati did, other schools lose and they get a chance to get in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Just because everything falls in place. But if that's completely taken away in its entirety, it's going to be bad for the overall the sport. And I think that, and the point I'm trying to bring up too is that these teams that went to the Big 12, these extra teams that went to the Big 10, maybe not the SEC because they're more regional. I think in a couple years down the line, they're not going to what they expect now. And congratulations to them because they're safe and they're in a coveted position. And I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying, though, based on the type of aggressive consolidation and everything that's going on and it leading to what it is, it's just I don't think it's going to end up the way they think it is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? I think that realistically, I think the Big Ten and the SEC are trying to consume it all, you know?
Well, what's to stop it at some point from not being about the Big Ten and the SEC? It just becomes college football, and it's Fox and ESPN run some again super conference kind of setup where you skip everything else, you get rid of all these old things we've been doing for 100 years. They're slowly tearing the thing apart.
Right.
You don't know. I'm not saying that's where it goes, but what's to stop it? You know, they've already look at the things that have happened in the past couple of years. You know, last 2 years, no one thought this stuff could happen.
Yeah, and I think collectively across the nation. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I tell people this all the time. The reason why college football is so great and it's so beautiful collectively across the board because it's not the NFL. That's why.
Now, amen. I've been saying the exact same thing for like the last, I don't know, year and a half, because no one's going to watch a subpar NFL once you lose everything is great about this sport, which they're slowly unraveling. And at some point, no one's going to watch it anymore. And that's what you're going to have. And really quickly, that's why I think that hopefully they keep those. You're talking about that they're going to get rid of. I think they know, and kind of touched on what Tony talked about. I've talked about in the past. They know that the people down in San Diego State, you guys, you know, great football fans. Sure, San Diego State's not in the playoffs, but you guys are still going to fall. Why? Because you guys do have a path to the game. Once they cut that path away, so you're not going to have auto bids for G5 schools or for some of these conferences in 2 years when they figure out what's the next round of playoffs is going to be. They can't cut that out because it's not because they don't want to, but selfishly they're going to do it because you would kill off, like Tony's talking about, you would kill all those college football fans. They're going to turn to Major League Baseball, to NFL football, to hockey or whatever. They're going to say, I'm done with it. If my school has no chance of ever winning, why do I care about this sport you're trying to shove down our throats?
Forget even having a path, Tim, for a second. Like one of the things that I think makes college football great compared to the NFL is a school like Oregon State being in a conference where, you know, once every 5 years, they might rise up and ruin a team like SC season, right? Like, it's not like Oregon State is competing for a national championship every year, but that doesn't mean Oregon State can't have a great season. You know, like, again, it's great to like compete for national championships, but again, I don't think that's what, and more power to the schools that do on a regular basis. That's great for them. But part of what makes the sport great is the chaos of the sport.
Yes.
And if I think people's like I hope I get the year right. Was it 2007 that was just nuts?
Yes.
Right? Like every week, like the number 1 or 2, like a bunch of top 5 losses, like every like week after week. And it's like, and that's like one of the people's favorite seasons. And if every week is just Texas versus Bama and OU versus like whatever, like not only are you cutting off access for those teams like the San Diego States or the Boise's or whoever who might have like a dream season and get to the playoffs, but it's going to get to a point where you're cutting off access for those teams to even play in games where they get the opportunity to knock off these big dogs that talk back and forth all the time about who's the greatest program of all time. And, you know, the Beavs rise up or the Cougs rise up and they knock
or even
off.
the mighty, even the gutty little Bruins once did that to USC. So yeah.
No, you're right. We did with 13-9. Does it still hurt?
Not really.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah, all right.
I'd like to make a motion that on this show we will never again speak of the year 2007 or of Stanford in that context. Is there a second?
Oh, God.
No one brought it up until you just
Rick
did,
has
Tony.
the second. All in favor, say aye.
I
Yeah.
We will
Rob-
never again speak
But
of
see, that's the funny thing.
the time
They
that I
crack
was
on the-
in. Go ahead.
Well, they crack on the Pac-12 again. How many national the Trojans on this panel? How many times did like Chris? How was that UCLA season when you guys beat us? It wasn't like you guys were world beaters that year, And look at the other teams, and they rise up and they win. That's the part you're talking about. Great point. It's not just about winning the playoffs, but also the people will talk about those games. You're still excited about it all these years later. Washington State fans, Oregon State fans, I hear, but Connor Johnson loves to bring up 2007 all the time. In 2006, and so it happens, and that is what college football is all about. When you have those top teams getting knocked off by teams that show up and kick their ass. I mean, that's the way. That's what college football should be about.
This shows you how broken the sport is. You have Stanford and Cal discussing with the ACC, and the ACC, again, like I mentioned, Florida State's president a week ago just talked about there has to be a redistribution of revenue because they're tied into that grant of rights through 2036, and there's no money. So, I mean, I don't know what's happening over there with Stanford and Cal speaking with them, but I would have to imagine the 14 teams aren't going to give up portions of their revenue to get Stanford and Cal there. So what that
No, and Rick, I don't know if you heard, SMU has offered to go for free.
Okay, but this leads me to believe that ESPN would have to throw some money at Stanford and Cal because where are they going to get the money? So if that's the case, why would you be paying two schools that are on the West Coast to go compete on the East Coast? And that's going to have to be a considerable amount of money that's going to be able to cover, extensive travel costs. So that shows you how broken it is. That 5 days later, you have two teams from the West Coast going into a broke-ass conference, the ACC, who's tied to a grant of rights through 2036. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And like you said, Tony, you got SMU saying, hey, take us. We'll come for nothing.
Well, and one of the issues for the ACC, and there are a lot of articles right now that deal in depth with the financials of this, so I don't want to get into it too much. But one of the issues is actually ESPN's contractual carriage rights fees for the ACC, because the ACC network would then be carried as in-state in Texas and California, and that would actually result in significant additional revenue.
Got it.
And that's per the contracts with Comcast and DirecTV and all those other people.
Tony,
so,
really quick.
I mean, yeah.
Sorry. So you know how the ACC has this thing where if they get X amount, but 7, 8, whatever it is, teams to leave, then they could disband the league, right? We know they're not going to leave because they're already in a good situation, and not all 7 or 8 would go to someone to be better or comparable. So my question though is, what about the Mountain West? You talked about earlier that, sort of, for instance, the Pac-12 screwing around with the SDSU, screwing that whole system up. What if a bunch of teams from the Mountain West were to leave and join the Pac-12? Would they need to pay those buyouts?
So it looks like that is a bit of a newspaper writer's fantasy scenario, but I mean, who knows in this wild time?
Why would that be? But why would that be? A fantasy if you can get 5, 6 teams to blow that up and join. Now they could also still keep that A5 status.
You'd have to have more than. I believe you'd have to have more than half, but I think there are some other contractual issues I've been told. I don't know. I don't have the Mountain West contracts, and none of us do. So I wouldn't speculate on it too much until we see analysis by people who have the contracts. But
Tim,
I mean, go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just saying, Tim, I think you're giving George Kliavkoff too much credit of actually brokering a deal like that.
Well, I'm pretty sure it'd be the Mountain West end doing everything. Hey, George, step back, let us handle this. You're out of your depth, George. Let us do something here to help out our conference as we go down
today,
the tubes.
Kirk Schultz today from Washington State actually said, thankfully, that the Pac-12, Washington State's hired some, I don't know which advisory firm they've hired, but Kirk Schultz flat out said it's time for all new people to be on this.
Yeah.
Now I said that months ago when they didn't finish this in like February. So it's good to know Kirk Schultz is only like 7 months late.
Yeah, man. But I just want to say, Rob, call in anytime. That was a great call. Appreciate your questions and your viewpoint. And I was really hoping, I've got a lot of friends that are alumni of the Aztecs in San Diego State. So I was really pulling for that to happen. Unfortunately, for you guys, the Pac-12 just dropped the ball.
Well, gentlemen, man, I really appreciate the time, man. It's always informative, man. So I appreciate it, and I'll definitely call back, man. And I'm eagerly anticipating what's going to happen next. So I'm just like you guys. I'm ready for football. But we'll go for there. And I don't want to see the I don't know if this is the dissolve. Like, I don't want to see any institution dissolve, man. You know what I mean? So I just want that chance to be there, even if it's 0.0001%, for any school, but.
Hey, Rob,
By the way, there's somebody in the chat is making dumb questions about Comcast. That's already taken care of. That was taken care of in last year and this year's Comcast payments to the network. So you can stop asking dumb questions about Comcast.
Hey, Rob, good luck to the Aztecs this year, except for a certain preseason or non-conference game you have against UCLA. But
I got you.
Feel free to especially call back before that game and or after it, but hopefully not after it, and talk some smack.
No, it'll be respectful, man. I mean, I get it. Rivalries are fun, and obviously, it's that's the health of the sport. So I appreciate it, guys. And if you're there, let me know. I'll be at the game too, man. I'm a season ticket holder, so
Cool.
yeah. But you know what? Thanks again, guys, for the opportunity, man. I appreciate it, and then I hope to talk to you guys soon, man. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, great call. Call back anytime.
Thanks, guys.
Tony, you there?
Yeah, sorry, my computer's being slow for some reason. Well, guys, looks like we don't have any more callers. Any last parting thoughts here?
I'm just excited to get the games going. Enough of this crap. I mean, it sucks the way a lot of this stuff turned out, but at some point we need to stop talking about the ineptitude of the Pac-12 over the past 10 years getting their shit together and move on to which should be probably the best season in the Pac-12's had in a long time.
I'd like to give a shout out, since we were talking about him earlier, to Dennis Dodd for throwing out that carrying the water full of Greg Sankey's crocodile tears about him calling Stanford and Washington State and sending his useless condolences to their program. What a leader. Thanks, Dennis Dodd, for that great story of nothing. And like you said, Tim, I'm very much looking forward to football actually starting, because other than wanting our former Pac-12 brethren to find a home and being interested in that, I'm to the point where I'm burnt out on all of this. I know it gets views. I know people love talking about it, but I'm definitely ready for games to start, because we can stop arguing about whose media contract is better and how great you are for some suit to make a ton of money, and we can actually start talking about what happens on the field. And I look forward to that.
It was supposed to be cathartic, right? They showed Tony for some of our Beaver fans, but apparently they've found homes at the Big 12 already, even though they're probably not going to make it into the Big 12.
I'd like to thank Tony and Tim for helping me out. I've had this concept of doing a weekly video, Trojans Talk on Tap. You can check it out on the USC channel. Was meant to talk about USC football primarily once a week, give you my opinion on the state of the program. But what do I have to do the first week? I got to talk about the Pac-12 or the Pac-4. But check it out. It's going to be a weekly video, primarily talking about USC football, and then offering you a good craft beer recommend for football season coming up. It's tailgating. We're going to get games. And you know what? It's all about quality, not quantity. You don't need to be pounding 6 Bud Lights. No, I'm going to give you a good craft beer recommend, a 16-ouncer, so you can impress your friends and drink a good beer. And speaking of good beer, congrats to USC with Stone Brewing coming up with a Fight On Pale Ale. Who would have thought that? Fantastic. So you'll be finding the Fight On Pale Ale in your favorite grocery, wherever Stone Brewing is sold, and at the Coliseum. So don't drink that Bud Light unless you're a Big 12 fan.
Wait. More money for USC? More money for USC? Oh, I like that.
There you go.
Always a good thing. Well, hey, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank all of our callers. Thank John Jackson. Just always a privilege and an honor to talk to him. To our fans that are a little worried right now, let's let this play out. It's not good for some. I think it will be okay for others, but there's nothing you can control about that. All you can do is cheer hard. All the players can do is go out there on the field and win games. And at the end of the day, if you win games, it's going to work out. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. And I hope everyone has a wonderful week. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the chats. Thank you to folks like Gixxer Squid and Sean Garner and Slap Happy, who were great supporters tonight of Mark's channel and the whole community. You guys, before you go, if you could just take a minute and just click the like button. I know it's silly. I know everyone says that, but it really does help Mark and the whole community. So thank you for spending the night with us, guys, everybody. As always, fight on, and we'll see you next week.